Good afternoon, and welcome to this first public event of the Regional Organization for Peace, Economics, and Security, or ROPES. My name is Ben Birnbaum, and I'm the founder of ROPES. And for those of you who are just learning about us for the first time, ROPES is an organization that seeks to provide young Emirati leaders and young leaders from across the Arab world the opportunity to engage with their Israeli and Palestinian peers. You know, miracles did not end in the time of the Bible or the Quran. And I remember distinctly when I first started working on ROPES in 2017, less than 6 years ago, coming to the UAE for the first time and meeting the Jewish community in Dubai, which at the time would meet very secretly to pray in a villa not too far from the Burj Al Arab. And simply the fact that there was a Jewish community in Dubai seemed like a revolution. Well, today, in the wake of the Abraham Accords, there are more kosher restaurants today in Dubai than in my hometown of Boston. With several direct flights every day between the UAE and Israel, hundreds of thousands of Israelis have come to witness something that most of them thought they would never see in their lifetime: a warm peace between Israel and an Arab nation. But as exciting as the changes we've seen are, if we do the right things today, the Abraham Accords can be only the opening chapter in a new Middle Eastern golden era. At ROPES, we dare to imagine a future in which there is peace between the State of Israel and all Arab states, including a prosperous, well-governed, and territorially viable state of Palestine. We dare to imagine a future in which both these states are integrated into a new regional order based on cooperative security, economic prosperity, and cultural exchange. We have no illusions that this future is right around the corner. Getting there is going to require political conditions that simply are not present today in either Israel or the Palestinian territories. But we also believe that the Middle East's leaders of tomorrow, including the students studying here at AGDA, needn't be doomed to be victims of history. They can be authors of history as well. And this organization was created to allow those young leaders to get to know each other today and to work together on common challenges and common opportunities. If you're a young Arab leader between the ages of 25 and 45, we have many ways for you to get involved with us. If you're interested in visiting Israel and the West Bank and getting an even-handed, honest view of the situation, you can apply to join one of our delegations. We're going to be doing 3 or 4 this coming year. If you're an Arab journalist who is interested in interviewing high-profile Israeli and Palestinian voices for peace, talk to us and we can help you get connected. And if you're an Arab venture capitalist who's interested in investing in Palestinian startups, or an Arab student who's interested in studying abroad in Israel, we can help you as well. Simply email us at info@ropes.org or talk to me or a member of our staff. We have our executive director here, Ksenia Svetlova, and Ibrahim, Amira, and Daphne. Can you stand up? That's our director of alumni relations, Ibrahim, our director of programming, Daphne Goldschmidt, and our program coordinator, Amira Mohammed. ROPES has been made possible by the efforts of many forward-thinking people, and I just want to take a moment to thank one of those people in particular, Ambassador Yusuf Al-Otaiba, who we're honored to have on our advisory board. I also want to thank the Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy, and especially Director General Nikolai Mladenov and SEPE for graciously hosting this event. And I thank our distinguished panelists and all of you for being here with us today. Today, we have an excellent panel discussion on how we can leverage the Abraham Accords to have a positive impact on the situation in Israel and Palestine. And it is my pleasure to introduce the moderator of that discussion, ROPES' new executive director, Ksenia Svetlova. Ksenia Svetlova is a former member of Knesset for the Nuwaimi party and served from 2015 to 2019. During that time, she was a member of the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee and headed 3 parliamentary caucuses. Prior to that, Ksenia was a very well-respected journalist for Israel's Channel 9. In fact, a minor celebrity. We were at the Louvre today, and Ksenia got noticed by a visiting Israeli tourist. She has also been a fellow at the Mitvim Institute, the Atlantic Council, and Reichman University's Institute for Policy and Strategy. and we are thrilled to have her now leading ropes. So Ksenia, without further ado, please.
Thank you very much, Ben. Dear friends, today's panel makes me feel excitement as of Abraham Accords were signed yesterday. 2 years has passed, but I think that it will be right to say, certainly on behalf of all of the ropes member of our team, that we feel that the excitement just doesn't go away because it's truly a revolutionary moment. And indeed, I think that the only bright spot in the Middle East in at least the past few decades. I apologized because I was starting to lose my voice yesterday. Thanks God it returned to me, but you will have to bear with me as I'm trying to do my best. We have an amazing panel today, and we will discuss shortly the issue of leveraging the Abraham Accords and its positive dynamic on Israeli-Palestinian conflict and finding ways to talk about the future despite the current challenges and the current difficulties. We are very much aware of these challenges and difficulties. We are not naive. Our eyes are wide open. And at the same time, I can tell you, as somebody who researches the Middle East for many years, I can tell you that 20 years ago, as a young student of the Middle East, in the high eve of the Intifada, sitting in Jerusalem, believe me, I could not imagine that in 20 years, I will be sitting here in Anwar Gargash Academy. By the way, again, our gratitude for you hosting our event. And we will be discussing Israeli, Palestinian, and regional relations while we are here in Abu Dhabi. So I just want to, again, say how important it is for Israel, for the region, and as we eye the regional integration and successful life for us, for our children, for the future generation, this is exactly the model that we would like to see in the Middle East, post-conflict Middle East, in which people work together and enjoy the good relations with each other without competing in a zero-sum game. There is no zero-sum game. All of us should win. All of us should win, Israelis, Palestinians, and all countries here in the region. I encourage you to, in the Q&A section, to ask myself and our distinguished speakers all of the questions that you would like to ask them. We will be having the mics, so just write down the thoughts, questions that might emerge during the opening remarks. And we will try, as time allows, to, of course, to answer as many questions as possible. So with us here today, His Excellency, Dr. Ali Rashid Al Nuaimi, Foreign Affairs Community Chair, UAE Federal National Council, Dr. Samir Sinijlawi, the Chairman of the Jerusalem Fund, and John Lyndon, Executive Director, Alliance for Middle East Peace. Each of you will have 7-8 minutes for your opening remarks. I will introduce you and your bios one by one, and then after that we will go to the questions. So we'll start with Dr. Ali Al Nuaimi, who is a member of the UAE Federal National Council for the Emirate of Abu Dhabi and Chairman of Defense Affairs, Interior and Foreign Affairs Committee at the Council. Dr. Ali Al Nuaimi is a leading international expert on extremism and education. He has more than 30 years of outstanding academic and professional achievements in government, non-government, and private sectors within the United Arab Emirates and abroad. As a pioneer of educational reform and policy in the UAE, Dr. Nuaimi served also as a chairman of Abu Dhabi Department of Education and Knowledge, is his capacity as a member of the Executive Council of the Government of Abu Dhabi, and as the Chancellor of the UAE University. Dr. Ali, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, Assalamu alaikum, Shalom, good evening or good afternoon, depends. Well, first I'd like to thank Ben and Robs for organizing this event. And I'd like to thank Anwar Gargash Academy for hosting us today. Talking about peace, talking about the Abraham Accord, it's very important to keep the momentum in talking about this issue. And I'll explain to you the UAE perspective when it comes to why we were part of this, why we engage in the Abraham Accord, and our vision related to this. First of all, you have to understand that this region has suffered a lot. And we've been suffering for the last 70, 80 years. The youth in this region, their mind and heart were hijacked either by extremists or by having no hopes for them. And this is where, in the UAE, we thought that we need a breakthrough. We need to do something outside the box. We need to create new initiatives, not only for the relationship between UAE and Israel, but the whole region. Because you have to understand this. When you talk about peace, it should be for everyone in this region. You can't exclude anyone, especially the Palestinian. If any nation wants to enjoy security, stability, and prosperity, they should understand it's a regional issue. It's not a national issue, especially with our region. So this is where, from the beginning, and I remember on August 13th, the first night, we announced the Abraham Accord agreement. We engaged in a campaign to explain what do we mean by the Abraham Accord. It's not a political agreement. It's a platform to transform the region into a new era. We want this region, everyone, without excluding anyone, to enjoy peace, security, and prosperity. And we made it clear from the beginning that the issue of the Palestinian rights is there. We did the Abraham Accord based on certain things that, as condition to bring the two-state solution to the table, to go to the negotiation table. And this is what was part of the Abraham Accord. And this is why I see it's very important to keep the engagement during this event, to make sure that we don't leave vacuum for those who want to divide us, for those who have an ideology that they want to enforce their ideology on us. And here I want to say this today. I know the challenges. There is no way back when it's come to the Abraham Accord. In the UAE, we believe the Abraham Accord is the future, not only for the UAE-Israeli relationship, it's for the region. But peace need champions to believe in it. And those champions should understand that there should be compromises. And they should have the courage to move forward. It is very important for leaders, political leaders, to understand that in peace, we all will win. And if we don't have peace, we all will lose. And we should be wise enough as political leaders to understand our responsibility toward the new generation, the future of our nation and the future of the region. We have to make compromise. And we have to have the courage to counter those who have an ideology that they want to impose on us and mislead us. Because they see the region, the nation, the world through their ideology. And when you follow an ideology, you will not be able to bring people together, even in the same nation. There is no one ideology that will bring the Israeli together. There is no an ideology that will bring the Palestinian together. There is no ideology that will bring the Arabs together. The only thing that will bring us all together is an understanding that we, all of us, we need to live together. We have to live together. We have the same right. And the way to move forward is through peace, through acceptance of each other, through engagement in a real dialogue, that we will reach something that will create a different region for all of us. There is those who believe in undermining what we are doing, who believes in dividing us, who are willing to sacrifice for their cause. We should have the courage. We should be willing to sacrifice for our cause. Peace needs a political will, need a leadership would have the courage. Remember, in Israel, Begin did have that courage. He made peace. Rabin, he had that courage. He saw the added value of peace. This is what we need now. And it is very important for all politicians, Arabs, Palestinian, Israelis, that when they talk publicly to the public, even to their followers, they have to understand that the region and the world is listening. And they have to approach their followers with a narrative that will gain the heart and the mind, not only of their relatives, but everyone in the region. Without understanding, accepting the same right for the Palestinians as the Israelis, we will not have peace. We need to come together and work hard that everyone, the Israeli and the Palestinian, go to the negotiating table with an understanding they have to live together. And they are responsible, not only toward their people, but toward the region. We need peace. They need peace. But we have to come together to work with them, to show them that in peace we all will win. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali, for these profound words of wisdom. As Mahatma Gandhi, I think it was, who said once that an eye for an eye, if we will continue like this, the whole world will go blind. And the only thing that can save us from this sad destiny is dialogue and moderation. Wasatiya, I think, yes, is the word. Now I'm very happy to give you another second speaker, Samer Abdelrazzak Al-Sinjilawi, a dear friend, a head of diplomatic and international relations at Fatah Shato Leadership. You can tell us more about this. It's fascinating. Samer is a chairman and major shareholder at the group Al-Fasid, a regional energy investment group with branches in Jerusalem, Amman, Abu Dhabi, and Madrid. Sinijlawi is a founding chairman of the Jerusalem Development Fund, a public corporation aiming to facilitate the development of Jerusalem by encouraging and sponsoring mega projects in the city as housing projects, hotels, commercial centers, and educational institutions. Dear Samer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ksenia. I would like to start by, of course, thanking Ropes for bringing this event and for this amazing institute, Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Institute, for hosting. I would like to start by saying that, unfortunately, the way of dealing and reaction of the Palestinian leadership towards the Abraham Accords was very naive, very childish, and it lacked responsibility. How can we as Palestinians afford losing a great friend like the Emiratis, a friend that is different in its approach towards the region and towards Palestinians in specific. Let me focus a little bit on the Palestinian aspect of the issue. Is dealing with the whole issue in a different way. We as Palestinians, we have lost hope that waiting for the international community to put enough diplomatic effort over Israel that can lead to political compromises. This strategy is a broken strategy. Even if one day, by mistake or intentionally, Israel drops an atomic bomb on Gaza, the USA and Germany will do nothing. There is a clear hypocrisy in how the West is dealing to this conflict. But Emirates has a different approach. While the West says we support two-state solution, and at the same time, USA or Europe allows Israel to continue killing this option on the ground by expanding the settlements. Emirates came and it stopped the annexation at a very critical moment. It saved a very big embarrassment for the whole international community. Because you can imagine if now the two-state solution is not officially on the table, what is left? Dealing with apartheid. So the rescue came from the Emiratis to this option that everybody is sticking to and trying to improve and advance. While the West claims support to the two-state solutions, recognizes one and does not recognize the other state. If you support two-state solution, why do you recognize only one of them? Why don't you recognize the other? The Emiratis are different. They support the two-state solution and they recognize both states together. So the Abrahamic Accord could be seen by a more responsible Palestinian leadership as an opportunity of engagement. We have tried the bilateral negotiations, and when Palestinians sits in front of an opponent that is 1,000 times stronger than them in economy and military, what can I achieve from this bilateral negotiations? We have been into Oslo negotiations since 30 years. And where did it lead us? To nowhere. But if I come to a framework, a regional framework, where I can sit into a better dynamics of diplomacy, there I have a chance. There is the opportunity that is waiting for us. So it was a big mistake to boycott the Abraham Accords and to attack it the way the leadership has done, the Palestinian leadership. It is to our advantage to see a friend that has managed to win the hearts and the minds of both the Americans and the Israelis, who are sitting in a new dynamics in the region. Now UAE is the leader of the Middle East in diplomacy, in economy, in every aspect. It is the leader. So we are losing this opportunity, unfortunately. And if you see the situation now with the new far-right wing government and its very dangerous decisions that have been taken into the Israeli cabinet on the meeting on the 5th of February and on the 12th of February. On the 5th of February, they have created a department for encouraging, expanding, and investment into housing projects for the settlements, legalizing the illegal outpost. And this Sunday, they have taken the decision to legalize 9 of the illegal outposts. So in a way or another, they have started annexations. And the only and the strongest insurance policy we have now is the Abraham Accords. Because the Israelis know that it was all about stopping the annexation. So what they are risking now is a lot. We have seen recently, for example, after the visit of Ben Gvir to Al-Aqsa Mosque, the most strong message that came to Netanyahu was canceling his visit to UAE. Nothing else. I think canceling or postponing this visit was stronger to him to any words he has listened from Blinken or Biden, because he knows that this is what the Americans are saying is more a lip service. And he has two of the most important strategic goals for Netanyahu now is the issue of Iran and Saudi Arabia. And he knows that both needs a good relation with the Abrahamic Accord countries, especially United Arab Emirates, and both needs to have the Palestinian engaged. So we have a very positive dynamics that have been created by the Abraham Accords. We as Palestinians, we need to see how we can shift our strategy and jump into this boat. I don't see this happening during Abbas. During Abbas, nothing is going to be changed. The day after Abbas, I think everything is open. The day after Abbas, most probably there will be elections and a new leadership will come. And the new leadership will be more responsible, more representatives, and I think it will be more engaging to what's happening now. Of course, I don't see that we don't have any comments or remarks on the Abraham Accords. We have, because every diplomacy in the world have some mistakes. One of them, for example, is that until now, we did not listen to any official reaction towards the decisions of the Israeli cabinet to legalize the new 9 outposts. Unlike the Americans, who have clearly, strongly, directly condemned this step. But again, these are minor issues. I believe that the Palestinian question has never been absent when those who were engaged in the Abraham Accords took the decision to be involved, especially the Arab parts of the Abraham Accords. It's a change of strategy. Maybe there was some doubts that we need to wait for the Israelis to deliver the good and then we pay the check. Because this was what is the Arab Peace Initiative all about when it came out of Saudi Arabia. And we waited for more than 15 years, but there was no change. Maybe now the philosophy is let's pay the check and then we need to expect that the goods should be delivered. But always the Palestinian question was in the middle of everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, Samer. I just want to tell everyone that Samer is very often guest in Israeli media, and his efforts to both present a very moderate and very honest Palestinian position on difficult issues, the issues of the conflict that scare us and make us doubt whether the peace is really possible. I think that your contribution is immense because Israelis do not meet Palestinians, not anymore. It's very rare, and that's why we in ROPES basically put this target to get together Palestinians, Israelis, and people of the Middle East from all countries of the Middle East, first of all from the Abraham Accord countries, in order for them just to sit and talk together. So thank you very much for your words. Okay, now we go to our third, but least but not the last speaker, my friend John Lyndon, who is the Executive Director of the Alliance for Middle East Peace, or the ALMEP. It's the largest network of peace builders in the region and the lead advocacy organization behind the Sinijlawi Middle East Partnership for Peace Act, or MEPA. A regular contributor and commentator on events in the Middle East, John is also a visiting fellow at King's College, London's Department of Middle East Studies. Please, John, and I just have to tell you that we heard quite a bit of criticism right now from Samer addressed to the international community that is being there forever, but seems to be unable to prevent certain developments. Please, perhaps you can react in your remarks to that.
I will. Thank you, Ksenia. And again, a big thank you to ROPES for putting the event together, for the team at AGDA for hosting us. it's a real privilege to be able to talk about this issue in this part of the world. It's something I actually couldn't have imagined possible a few years ago, the conversation we've just heard. And it actually relates a little bit to Ksenia's last comment. I think, and who knows, we're often wrong when we make predictions about the future, I think we're coming to the end of a distinct era in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And if you look at these sort of step changes that take place every generation or two, from 48 to 67, and then 1993 with Oslo, and the Second Intifada in 2000, there's very different characteristics, as well as some continuity to each one. And I hope and believe that the Abraham Accords are going to be one of the most important data points and variables in framing what comes next, because the current situation is so stale and outdated and outmoded and really such a disservice to the people in the region. And I think the key question, which is going to frame what happens next for Israelis and Palestinians, isn't going to be about recognition of Israel or the PLO, or about 67 borders versus 47, or all the kind of paradigms we dealt with in the past. All those things will be important, don't get me wrong. It's going to be about separateness versus connectedness, about whether we're engaging each other or not. And unfortunately, the direction of travel, particularly since the Second Intifada in the region, has been dreadful with regard to that question for Israelis and Palestinians. So I run a network, ALMEP, the Alliance for Middle East Peace, which is a group of over 170 NGOs. We're very proud that ROPES is amongst them, that are focused on disrupting that separateness, that separation, initially between Israelis and Palestinians. Because like Ksenia said, it is incredibly rare for an Israeli and a Palestinian, particularly a young Israeli and a Palestinian, to have a meaningful engagement with each other. It's within the margin of error of 0% of 15 to 21-year-old Israelis and Palestinians. So we as internationals will fly in and crisscross this very small parcel of land and have these really deep and fascinating conversations with both Israelis and Palestinians, which is an intense privilege that Israelis and Palestinians do not get to enjoy. And I'm afraid that ignorance and lack of understanding of the other is, as you would expect, beginning to generate very, very problematic and troubling and disturbing attitudes amongst both young Israelis and young Palestinians, where we have majorities. We conducted a youth poll quite recently, majorities of the youngest in both societies who deny the legitimacy of the other to be on the land in any formulation at all, see the presence of the other as fundamentally illegitimate. Something I want to note, the Abraham Accords is an incredible asset in disrupting, talking about how both Jews and Palestinians are indigenous to the region, culturally, historically, religiously. And I think if we start from there as a point, we end up somewhere much, much better. And I think I've heard that in all the comments we've heard today. But also that we have majorities of young Israelis and Palestinians who think that violence is the best or the only way to solve or further their political agenda. And we have, of course, widespread rejection and drop in support for a two-state solution, which isn't news to most of us paying attention to this issue. Now, the one positive in this poll was that we actually had surprisingly high levels of support amongst young Israelis and Palestinians on the principle to engage one another. Right? So we found that around 30%, with no meaningful difference between young Israelis and young Palestinians, do not want to engage in peace-building programs, the kind that our members and ROPES run, will not participate, think they're illegitimate, will protest against them. Voices we're very used to hearing. Leaving 70% of both populations who, under differing conditions and with differing caveats, would be interested in engaging in programs that we know statistically have been proven to radically disrupt those same attitudes, to transform people's attitude towards the other, and really importantly, to encourage them to take action in their everyday lives, in their behavior, and how they vote and organize themselves in service of peace. And to the point about the international community that Ksenia made, I completely agree. Many diplomats would argue with some validity, we don't have constituencies in both societies that are willing to support a meaningful diplomatic process. We can't invent them out of fresh air. And what I would say to those same diplomats is, yes, you're completely correct. However, we could be making investments and strategic decisions that generate those constituencies, that strengthen the hands of people that want to connect Israelis and Palestinians, that can rebuild a shattered peace camp in both societies. And we know that these programs are very effective at doing them. As mentioned in the introduction, we at ALMEP were very proud to have led the advocacy that passed a piece of legislation in the United States 2 years ago now, called the NIDA MLOE Middle East Partnership for Peace Act, or MEPA, which will see $250 million invested in this work over 5 years. It's the largest ever investment in peace building. We believe that can form the kernel, the catalyst for the sort of work we're talking about. Unfortunately, and this is a difficult position to be in, it's nowhere near enough money because the situation is so difficult. The populations are large and growing, and there's a sense of urgency. Now, one thing we did not anticipate when we were working to pass that legislation, which is bipartisan, supported by key Republicans and Democrats, is a core of the Biden administration's policy, but will also be the core of any future Republican presidents. We did not anticipate the Abraham Accords. I want to congratulate Ben for anticipating them because they really did appear out of nowhere, to me at least. I mean, there was definitely things happening behind the scenes we were all aware of, but in that moment, for them to come about, and not just as a reality, but the language they were couched in, around people-to-people engagement, around the commonality of faith and culture amongst both people, learning the lessons from the flaws in the peace agreements with Egypt and Jordan. They are qualitatively different. And we believe that this new push towards peace-building programming and connecting Israelis and Palestinians and doing that at a scale we've never seen before, fused with the Abraham Accords, could do something very transformative. The governments of the United Arab Emirates in the lead, but the other governments also who are party to the Abraham Accords, they did something very brave. And it was very forthright and sudden. And it shows true leadership. However, we know that societies are much more messy and complicated and move slower and sometimes in zigzags than governments can. And there's an opportunity now to backfill the Abraham Accords with the relationships and the social and political and economic change that can strengthen them and buttress them and make them permanent and institutionalized reality in this region and can put the Israeli-Palestinian conflict at the core. And that's where I think the real opportunity is, and to bring it back to that chance for this next paradigm for Israelis and Palestinians to be about connectedness. And I would just end by encouraging anybody working in policy, whether it's here in the UAE, via a think tank, an institution like AGDA, or via an embassy, to focus your policy and action and call on both the Israeli and Palestinian governments to facilitate that connectedness, to remove as many barriers as possible to Israelis and Palestinians being together, be they psychological or normative, like anti-normalization, or physical, like permits and walls and checkpoints that make it much more difficult for Israeli-Palestinian engagement. There are going to be forces trying to build those walls much, much higher right now. And we would love, particularly the Abraham Accord countries, to push and say, no, we want to make this an open, new 21st century Middle East, where Israelis, Palestinians, and people across the region can meet as equals and peers and help to design what the 21st century is going to look like for this generation. Thank you.
John, I know how frustrating can be sometimes the work of a peace builder in the Middle East, because it seems that you are building something and it's just disappearing from your hands before you finish to create, another layer of something. So we are very grateful for your efforts and continuous work on this direction. Just want to remind everyone that although the situation is definitely more than challenging, it's worrying on the ground, yet the recent poll of the Geneva Initiative showed that the support for the two-state solution in Palestinian and Israeli parts is consistent. It's about 50% on both sides. It can be 1% lower, 11% higher, but basically this is the numbers that we are seeing, correct me if I'm wrong, for the last 2 decades or so. We did not still depart from this reality. Dear friends, we are going now for the Q&A section, and Amira and Ibrahim from our team will be immediately ready with the mics. So get ready to ask questions. I will use my prerogative as a moderator, and I will ask you each one a question. Please be brief. I know that you're wonderful speakers, all of you, and have a lot to share with us, but I'm also sure that we have a lot of upcoming questions. So Dr. Ali, we'll start with you. We discussed, you and also Samer discussed this point. The UAE, by making this leap of faith and signing the Abraham Accords, had actually enlarged its leverage as a stakeholder in this process. States that are not engaged in open diplomatic relations have more difficulty to influence. They can be more bold. Sometimes diplomacy is coveted, it's under the carpet. So how do you see, given the situation right now, given the current outline of the Israeli government, how do you see the next Emirati steps?
Well, first, you know, I'd like to thank John for what he said, because this is what we are doing. And it's a long-term investment in peace for the whole region. And I'll explain it in a way that, you know, since the signing of the Abraham Accord, we have more than 500,000 Israeli visiting the UAE. This is the real investment. Those Israelis, before they came to the UAE, they have a certain stereotype, perception about Arabs. When they came here, they found something different. They found that we welcome them deep from our heart. We accept them. We are willing to engage with them. They saw that we can live together. Even here in the UAE, they didn't only interact with Emirati. You know, they interact with Palestinian, Egyptian, Saudi, Kuwaiti, all those Arabs living here. And I think this is where it will take time, but it's working. I am sure that this will be reflected in the future election in Israel, because those who came here, they will see the outcome of having peace, and that they are part of the region, they are accepted, and we can live together and engage in so many things together. The UAE, you know, always is making initiatives, is engaging with everyone to promote peace in the region. Even, you know, when the new government was formed, we wanted to make sure that we send the right message to everyone. We don't want to exclude anyone. And we had our National Day celebration in Tel Aviv. Our ambassador invited everyone. He didn't exclude any political party, regardless. They were there. It is these things that will build bridges of trust, respect, and also will let us engage with them to know from us directly our vision, our policy, where see the region, and see the added value of seeing peace rather than an ideology. Our concern now is what's happening in the West Bank. And it is serious. I understand, I appreciate what you said. It is serious that there is threat now. And if a third, I don't know, a third or a fourth intifada, third, if it's happened, we don't know that where it will take us to. This is where we have to be proactive. We have to engage to stop this from happening. You know, last year when I was in Israel and I was at the Knesset, the speaker used to be the head of the Israeli police during the second Intifada. Yes, he explained to me the challenges and the threats. Both sides will suffer. The civilian, the Israeli civilian and the Palestinian civilian will suffer. So it's very important that we work hard to stop this, to turn it the other way, to let them engage in building bridges of trust, respect, and peace. And it is the responsibility of all of us, and even the international community. Because if a third intifada erupted, remember this, we don't know where it will take us. Now, we can do something to stop it from happening. We should have the courage, the political will to do something innovative outside the box to turn it around.
Thank you very much. We are hoping and praying that there will be no third intifada. I lived in Jerusalem during the second intifada, and this is a horrible ordeal. Nobody wants to get back to it. Samar, my next question is to you. You are the chairman of the Jerusalem Fund. You live in Jerusalem, in one of the most hot, boiling neighborhoods, Sheikh Jarrah. And when we see right now during the last month and a half, that the tensions are growing, the violence is, holding its head again high. What can be done, and what countries of the Abraham Accord, specifically UAE, can do in order to create hope and also use its weight on the international arena, in the Middle East arena, to prevent from this horrific scenario to really take place?
Well, unfortunately, I think the coming Palestinian Intifada is becoming very difficult to be able to avoid. It's an accumulation. The weather have been created and the storm is coming. Will the storm come in 1 hour or in 1 week or in 1 month or during Ramadan or before Ramadan? Nobody really, no expert can give an answer for this, but the weather was created. We should all understand that the occupation was too long to be accepted anymore by average Palestinians. But by those young Palestinians in the age of 13 or 14 that unfortunately found themselves surrendering to violence, taking a knife or a gun and going to the street. They have no leader that directed them towards such an action. Nobody paid them to do so. And nobody had the power to influence them not to do so. They are a product of the situation that everybody has contributed. Everybody has led the occupation to be an open-ended occupation. The young generation, the Generation Z in Palestine, those who have been born after the mid-90s until 2010, that they are connected to another world through the internet. They don't really care about what Abbas says in Ramallah. So this shuttle diplomacy of Blinken going and coming, trying to convince Abbas to de-escalate. How could Abbas, is he really connected? Is he really influencing? This is just a waste of time and energy. The weather has created a problem that is too strong. This young generation have lost hope of any better future. And this is the challenge. How can we restore hope among the young generation, Palestinians and Israelis? It should be by putting an end to this situation now. Most of the Palestinian generation, Ksenia, don't really care about two states. They care about human dignity. So whether it is one-state solution or two-state solution or 8-state solution, federation or confederation, whatever, Palestinians will agree to it. We are expecting the Israelis to decide to which direction they want to go with us. Let the Israeli community and society and the Israeli people negotiate among itself. How should they deal with 7 million Palestinians that are sharing the same land with Israelis? I know that we as Palestinians, we have committed a lot of mistakes and continue to commit mistakes. We should change our strategy into the only working strategy for Palestinian is the strategy of nonviolence. Full stop. We cannot resort to any kind of other strategies. And I think both Palestinians and Israelis should have some painful recognitions. From the Palestinian side, I should say that any Palestinian strategy should first of all recognize Holocaust, respect its memory, and understand its consequences, because the fear of security is real inside the Israeli society. And the second, my personal opinion, we should recognize the historical rights of Jews in the land of Palestine and Israel. But they have never been alone. There were others, and the others is us. So they should also recognize that we also share the same historical right in this land. And based on this common future, we could easily find based on this common history, we can easily find common future.
What can I say? We have here diplomats, we have politicians, ex-politicians. Can we just sign now and get this deal done? It would be amazing. John, I would like to ask you, when we met the last time, you were actually not there because you were down with the COVID, but in the conference in Jerusalem, we discussed the space that was created for the Arab states after the Abraham Accords. The space where can they get maybe more active and contribute more to creating, few possibilities for both peoples, mediate, and so on. And the clear example is, for example, it's the Moroccans that helped a lot with the Allenby Bridge crossing at the time, the humanitarian aid that is coming from the UAE, even to Gaza Strip, that has been governed by Hamas now for 17 years. Can you talk about to us, please let us through more opportunities that can be created to the Arab states, basically to save us from ourselves?
Yes, of course. I mean, and there are opportunities. I think actually the Moroccan one is really interesting, where it was the first case study I'm aware of post-Abraham Accords, where one of the parties to it employed their leverage in their relationship with Israel to open the Allenby crossing, the most important commercial crossing and civilian crossing from the West Bank into Jordan, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's been reduced a little bit now, but it's still a big, significant uptick in life quality for Palestinians in the West Bank. And I think it's a good example of other things that we could look to focus upon. I think it's interesting talking about Jerusalem. I think that's an area we could really focus on. No matter what happens with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Jerusalem will continue to be a mixed city where about 60% of the people are Jewish and about 40% of the people are Palestinian. Two-state, one-state, confederation, whatever status quo, it doesn't matter. This will be forever the petri dish for either Jewish-Palestinian cooperation and coexistence or violence. And it's also such an important symbolic site with regards to the holy site for the three Abrahamic faiths and for the Abraham Accords. I don't want to sound like a cynical marketing person, but it's so on brand, right? It's around the Abrahamic faiths. It's around people-to-people engagement. It goes beyond and transcends politics. Every outbreak of violence since the 1930s in the region has started there. And there's an interest in outside-in ideas. The Abraham Accords are part of the outside-in analysis, right? That we can do something good in the region that can resonate for Israelis and Palestinians. And for Jerusalem, it's tended to be the kind of point zero for outbreaks of violence and terrible moments in this conflict's history. But the opposite could also be true, right? Absent a final status agreement, which is some way off, and I think we need to be really working for the long term, we could be doing something really measurable to transform Jerusalem and to make it a more just and equal city that really lives up to its history and its reputation and its symbolic power. And I think that's where the UAE and other parties to the Abraham Accords could focus. I want to thank the UAE for the contribution they made to the East Jerusalem Hospital Network last year, which is very, very significant to help to keep Palestinians to have access to the largest cancer provision for them in the region. And it's an example of how we could then go further, building more schools. Palestinians in East Jerusalem are terribly underserved with classroom capacity and space, building community centers. Now, I don't want to get into detail on this. It's very hard to get planning permission to build a children's playground in East Jerusalem. There's very few green spaces for Palestinians that you see a lot of in West Jerusalem. And I guarantee you, if the UAE came to Israel and said, this is a priority for us, we would love to see East Jerusalem blossom and to have these spaces for both Jews and Palestinians to be able to live in these communities and neighborhoods and to see the economic and lived reality improve, because it's really declined since the Second Intifada. I don't think left, right, religious, secular, there will be all that much objection inside the Israeli coalition if the most important new strategic ally for Israel says this is a priority for us. And I can tell you for Palestinians, and Samar, feel free to disagree with me if I'm wrong on this, for them to see that material improvement in the city that's so important to them, whether they're Jerusalem or not, as a fruit of the Abraham Accords, would also help to capture people's imagination of what's possible. It's the last thing I'll say on this. It's very frustrating to me how people who want to see peace and equality and dignity in the region were so jaded and cynical about the Abraham Accords. I don't make it a left-right thing, but it's a problem very often on the left. This sort of fatalism and cynicism about these new developments that essentially David Makovsky from the Washington Institute said, it will either be a bridge or a bypass road, right? And it will be one of those things depending on how we engage with it. And for people that are working for Palestinian rights and for equality and for peace and democracy, to see it as this new dynamic opportunity in a context that is so stale, where we haven't had any disruption for 2 decades other than violence, try and use it and utilize it to generate these new openings and opportunities and start small. So the Jerusalem thing, that's eminently doable, the Allenby crossing, helping with the religious sites as well. Oh, and the final thing, using this extraordinary institution here, city and country, as a place for Israelis and Palestinians to come. Because this might sound silly, because they're based right next to each other in the region. There actually is almost no physical spaces for Israelis and Palestinians to organize and come together freely and securely and safely. And to have them coming here to see what the UAE has built as a melting pot of different nationalities and cultures, and to have the confidence to be able to come out of their comfort zone and use this place as a track to destination, as a place for new ideas to be thought up. That would be such an amazing gift to Israelis and Palestinians right now too.
Thank you very much, John. Amira and Ibrahim, please stand so our attendants can see you. If there are questions, please. I have a question over here. Please just, sir, please say your name and to who you address the question, please.
Mark Sievers, addressing the question to particularly Samer, but whoever's interested. Very, very interesting discussion. Thank you all. I think the focus has been on the politics of it, the diplomacy and people to people, which are all important. But I think a very important component of the Abraham Accords has been the economic aspect, certainly in the UAE, between UAE and Israel, the trade, the investment, technology transfer, cooperation in many fields, including health. Is there a potential to build on that to attract support from the Palestinians if the authority would not prevent it? Or am I mistaken in believing the authority is preventing?
Well, we all know that the current leadership will continue to block very good opportunities for Palestinians, including this one. But I think let's focus now on Jerusalem. One of the major problems in Jerusalem and the tensions that is generated is the big gap between East and West Jerusalem. There is a gap of 60 years and around 20 billion USD. You can see the difference in the level of economy and the lifestyle between East and West. And here I would say that I agree with you. Yes, there are a lot of things that can come from a mutual friend like the Emiratis in Jerusalem to start with. For example, we have been talking about how really is the education system in both sides affecting hatred among young people. Why don't we build very decent international schools in East Jerusalem where our kids go together, Jews and Palestinians, and have a global citizen identity, international education? The level of education here in Emirates is very, very high, amazing. If we can copy 1 or 2 schools here from Abu Dhabi, in East Jerusalem, or in West Jerusalem, or on the borders, and allow our kids to mix in this school, the dynamics in 20 years will be different, or in 15 years. Investment into the tourism sector, for example, which is very profitable in Jerusalem. Do you know that from 67 until now, not a single hotel was built in East Jerusalem? We don't have in East Jerusalem until now a single public swimming pool for our kids. We don't have a football stadium, no sports. And that's why the kid in the age of 15, who's very much connected to his virtual world, and see the opportunity on the other side of the city, the Yes Planet, the Teddy Stadium. He see young Israelis surfing on the beach, and he doesn't have all of this. And out of individual interest to have a better future, he's turning into violence, unfortunately. And hatred is a common enemy, and it exists on both sides. There are hatred also in young Israelis who participate in the flag demonstration every year and come from West Jerusalem down the road to East Jerusalem chanting death to Arabs while we are hearing their voices inside our homes. Hatred is there and we need to fight it. It's a common enemy.
Thank you very much, Samer. I already have some questions that are coming to my WhatsApp, but we will prioritize first those who are raising hands. Yes, please. Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Shayma Blushi. I have two questions. My first question will go to His Excellency Dr. Ali and to Sameh as well. And I want to talk more about politics, less on social initiatives. In 2018, we saw the introduction of the Basic Law, which establishes Israel as the nation state for the Jewish people, which by default ostracizes the Palestinian citizens of Israel. We also saw the removal of Arabic as a second national language. And then after the Abrahamic Accords in 2020, initially, there was a pause on the building of settlements, but with the new Israeli government, we see a promise on building further settlements. We see that the sanctity of the Holy Aqsa Mosque was already abused by, settlers and Ben Gvir. So I want to know what can the Abrahamic Accords do to prevent this from further escalating? Because, like Sameh was saying, it seems like a third intifada is hard to avoid. My second question is for you, John. When we talk about peace initiatives, we often focus on Palestine and Israel, but there's one part that seems to be left out, which is the occupied Golan Heights. So I want to know, in NGOs and peace organizations, what is the perspective towards the occupied Golan Heights? I know that right now, many peace activists might say that the situation in Syria right now is not quite safe. It wouldn't be the best idea to return the occupied Golan. There are some interest in the Israeli government to do so, but it's been occupied for quite some time and it hasn't been returned yet. So what is the intention or what is the perspective of peace organizations towards the occupied Golan Heights? Thank you.
Shukran, Nathan. Well, the UAE is doing all what we can do. We are engaging with the government. We are engaging with many Israeli friends outside the government also. Religious leaders, public figures, with our friends in the United States, European Union, and others. Jewish leaders around the world, we are trying to communicate the right message to them. And here I want to say this. Personally, when I say the only way that we have is the two-state solution, it's not only for the Palestinian. It's for the best interest, I believe, for the Israeli also, to move immediately in engaging in a negotiation to create the two-state solution. And, this is where when, in my opening speech, I mentioned that those that have an ideology, we shouldn't let them mislead us, hijack the peace initiative. And this is where, we need a political will from these politicians to see the added value of having peace instead of creating a narrative for an election campaign that will let them win. But on the long run, that will be a threat to the national security of their nation. This is what we are saying. Playing with religion and holy places is a dangerous game. You can't control it. Maybe now you can do something about it. But if those extremists on both sides see that we are not acting, we are not engaging in creating solutions to stop them, or action, a serious action to stop them, that will send a message which they will understand, will encourage them to do more of these things. And if they do so, all of us, not only the Palestinian, not only the Israeli, the region will suffer a lot.
Definitely, there is a lot of expectations from the Emiratis. After the Abraham Accords, I think they became more under the projector because, as I said, they are a common friend for us and for the Israelis, and the common friend has a lot of responsibility. Unlike the Americans, who sometimes consider their friendship is to support and give immunity even when something wrong happens. I think what it's expected from the Emiratis, out of friendship and interest towards the Israelis, they sometimes should say, stop, this is the limit. And it's working. The test after the visit of Ben Gvir to Al-Aqsa Mosque show that the Emirati diplomacy is very powerful. Netanyahu is obsessed to have the peace prize, Nobel Peace Prize. Is obsessed on achieving something with the Saudis. Is obsessed into putting an end to the Iranian threat, and he knows that he needs the support of the region and the Emiratis. It's very important for him, or he will lose the support of the whole world. He will not be able to go anywhere. I am not very much optimistic, like His Excellency, on the possibility of two states. I live the reality, the sad reality. I see that there is no land left for a Palestinian state. If you bring the best urban developers, if you bring the best map experts, security experts, and you show them what's happening on the ground, they will tell you, forget about it. You cannot build a Palestinian state. The train has left the station. Yet, for the sake of argument, we will tell the Israelis, fine, you are not ready now to discuss the two-state solution, not the one-state solution. You are not ready now to handle the Palestinian issue. We can wait, but under one condition. Until you are ready to discuss this issue, I want rights. I cannot stay another 60 years without rights. If you want to take another 60 years until you figure out what you want to do with Palestinians, I want to enjoy equal rights. Why shouldn't I? Now, I was born in Jerusalem. I am not a citizen of any state. So if you don't want to provide a state, a Palestinian state that I will be a citizen in, I would like to be a citizen in your state and discuss the issue from within the Knesset. Why not? No occupation in history has been open-ended. And if all the support Israel is taking from the international community is based on the theory that this occupation is temporary. It is no more temporary. It is permanent, and it's continuing. So the solution is very urgent. You can compensate Palestinians on any piece of land you confiscate or a home you demolish. But how can you compensate them on time that is stolen from our lives? And this needs to be stopped immediately. If not within a framework of two states, we need to be practicing full civil and legal rights within the system that is most powerfully determining the details of our lives.
Thank you. I mean, just briefly before I answer the question in serious, to relate to what Samar said, our members and all, we don't take a position, on final status. But what I would say is that whether you believe in a two-state solution, and I used to run an organization where that was our entire identity, or confederation in one state, or ambiguous about it, every version of those solutions is more viable and better if Israelis and Palestinians have trust and relationships and pushing back against the kind of fear and dehumanization which makes each one of those paradigms unworkable and creates the insecurity we're talking about. So I just want to bring it to the issue of people and not all get lost too often in constitutional or territorial frameworks, which I think sometimes can be interesting conversations, but they leave us where we started. And it's a good segue to the Syria question too, which I got to be honest, until you said Golan Heights, I had no idea that's what you were going to say, which is a kind of, I guess, a reminder of how much it has fallen off the agenda since the kind of annexation of the Golan. I'm not an expert on that part of the conflict. I want to first say that. But what I would also say is geopolitically, there is not currently a sort of interlocutor running the Syrian state who you could imagine a diplomatic process working with or any pressure to do so because of the security situation in Syria. And it will be very hard to build either the international pressure or, frankly, the domestic consent to hand the Golan Heights back to the Assad regime right now, considering what's going on inside Syria and the likelihood that Israeli citizens will pay a huge security price for it. But that's not to diminish the fact that this is one of the issues that needs to be resolved. And I think taking it back, I guess, to what's the more urgent priority, because it's an important detail that distinguishes Golan from the West Bank and Gaza. It doesn't affect as many human beings. It has to be said. Not that it doesn't affect none, but because citizenship was given, to Samer's point, to all of the residents of the Golan who remained, and it doesn't mean that there aren't bad things happening or things we can debate and discuss. The issue of Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza is more pressing, and it can be a mechanism and a springboard towards a larger resolution. And I wouldn't just include Syria and the Golan in this. So there's obviously territorial claims that Syria has. I mean, the current Israeli prime minister, paradoxically, is probably the Israeli prime minister who came closest in history to giving back the Golan Heights to Syria. He will never talk about that publicly. So there is definitely precedent and the ability to open that again. But I actually would compare it to the European Union, weirdly. So once we started looking at territorial disputes as part of a big, broad, ambitious, ideological project about breaking down borders, building continuity and relationships, to the point Mark made about economy, building a regionally integrated economy that could provide jobs for the next generation. Like, I don't want that question to go unaddressed. The biggest threat, if you look at the Arab Youth Index or the survey done each year, most young Arabs, including Palestinian Arabs, are preoccupied about the fact that they don't have jobs, they don't have an opportunity to be able to have gainful employment. That's truth from Morocco all the way to the Persian Gulf. So working on that as part of a regional project, which then you begin to look at some of the territorial disputes that exist, and they exist in Morocco, Syria, and lots of different, here in the Gulf also, as part of a wider project. I don't anticipate, and I've been wrong about many things before, I don't anticipate bilateral negotiations between Israel and Syria narrowly on the future of the Golan in my lifetime. I could anticipate discussions about the Golan Heights as part of a bigger picture conversation about reconciling territorial disputes in the region as we build this new Middle East.
Thank you very much, John. Okay, we are almost out of time, but if there is a brief question, or perhaps we can take two together and one of the speakers will address it. I see two gentlemen over there who raise their hands. Maybe you can voice out one after another, and then we will have somebody for 1 minute to answer quickly. Please.
Okay, my name is Mohammed Al-Ghuri. I'm a senior researcher in Israeli affairs at Trends Research and Advisory. So clearly the Palestinian-Israeli crisis was smoldering, but what is happening nowadays is vice versa. And I totally agree with every single word that Dr. Rashid Al Nuaimi has said. When the CIA director says that he fears of the third intifada, that means there's something sensitive and serious is going on the ground. And here we are talking about West Bank. When the terrorist acts that are happening in the West Bank are done by younger generation among the Palestinians, they are in their 20s. So that means something is, we are waiting for something tremendous that will happen in the future if we do not control the security scene. So my question is not for the Emiratis, not for the Palestinians, and nor for the European. Allow me, ma'am, I want to ask you, because we want to hear the Israeli voice. The question is related to the ultra-nationalist officials. How, or what's the way of convincing them to get rid of the extremist policies that they are taking in the West Bank? Because this is the main question that will lead to de-escalation in the area. So I don't know if you can answer me. I know you are not the speaker, but we would love to hear an Israeli voice. Thank you.
My name is Saud Sagar, and my question would be more to Mr. Sammer, since you've mentioned Generation Z, a generation that is actually looking to a brighter future and to have peace in Jerusalem overall. I would say some of us has been joking, and especially on the social media, when it comes to the Palestinian youth. Some of them, they do definitely carry the message of peace, but the moment that they are actually starting to talk about it, those, I would say, this spark is actually get distinguished either by their families or by the community in Jerusalem. And some of them are, I would say, excommunicated and considered traitors of the Palestinian case. So how is this problem has been dealt with, or how do you see that this problem is being dealt with? And how can the Abrahamic Accord itself help in this dialogue between the Palestinian community itself, the people who actually, I would say, the young generation who actually want to have peace in East Jerusalem? Thank you.
I will answer very quickly to leave more time for Samar. I can just tell you one thing. There is the dynamics in the Israeli government today. Well, what can we say about it? We have the more moderate voice, and the most moderate voice in this government is that of the Prime Minister, who is, of course, the stronger element, stronger than all of the other parties. Who is the person that is basically leading Israel for now 13, almost 14 consecutive years. And over 1 million Israelis keep voting for him, despite all of the challenges, criminal charges, and so on. He prides himself as the father of the Abraham agreements on the Israeli side. So for him to risk something as dear to his heart as Abraham Accords is unimaginable. I think that the partners of Israel for Abraham Accords have to remind him, not the extremists in his government, because there is no dialogue much, unfortunately, with them. Also for us inside Israel, we cannot speak to them. Those are people who have their eyes on specific goal. And even if it's, the cost will be immense, such as, for example, burning the place with the third intifada, they are ready for it. But I don't think that the Prime Minister is ready for this. So I think that he needs to be reminded constantly that the world is watching. And it's not only the US and not only Canada or Germany. It's the Abu Dhabi, it's Rabat, it's Manama, it's Cairo, it's Amman, all of these countries who are partners for peace, some for many years and some for just the last 2 years. They will not tolerate it. They will not tolerate it. So I think that the game should be quite simple, basically. You can win it all. You can become, the maker of peace for your land if you will continue with the line of moderation that is supported so much and led by Emiratis, by Moroccans, by Bahrainis, and others. In the other case, the bilateral relations might exist in some form or the other, but it will not be living the full potential of this splendid relationship. So for now, I think that there are millions of voices in his head. It's the voices of the current coalition members. Some of them, the voices of the spoilers, basically, yes, that do not have the same goal as he does and as we do. This is the goal of expanding Israel's relationship with the region, not minimizing it. And again, Netanyahu's visit to Abu Dhabi was postponed. And this is something that he coveted since the last 2.5 years. And his visit in Abu Dhabi was postponed for different reasons, for 5 times. Okay, so, and there is no date yet for his visit. I think that, again, this is something that is counterbalanced much more than admonitions of Blinken or even Biden himself, because Netanyahu has his eyes on a goal. He is the father of the Abraham Accords, And if they will, be affected negatively by some dynamics in the West Bank, he will be suffering the consequences personally. This is what I.
There should be a lot to be done in creating channels of dialogue between Palestinians and Israelis. And I think we will both appreciate the interference of United Arab Emirates into this. As Palestinian, I see no other way but to be engaged with any Israeli that would like to talk to us, especially the right wing. Some days ago, I met the assistant of Ben Gvir in a coffee shop in West Jerusalem. It was a tough discussion, but it's smart for us to generate respect to us and to our sincere approach to find a way out of this situation. I think Emirates can do a lot. We need to see in this institute, for example, some initiatives into bringing right-wing Israelis, activists, members of the Knesset, and some Palestinians, and let them talk in one room with your presence as moderators. It will help. And this is the only way. If we as Palestinians couldn't find a father inside the right wing to any political option, it will not happen. We can talk to ourselves for another 100 years. And we can talk to the West for another 200 years. Nothing will happen. I need to convince the Israelis on something. And here we need to have the track to diplomacy. I just have one remark. It's very sensitive, but I would like to mention it. And maybe some people will find it a little bit strange. I don't think that it's right to apply the term terrorism into the acts of a youngster of 12 or 13 years old. We are totally against violence. We are very sensitive to any suffer that is caused to any Israeli. It's very hard for me as a Palestinian to see these two kids from remote losing their lives in violence. But to think that a youngster in the age of 12 really is committing terrorism, although he's having the same effect, I think, and I find myself responsible into trying to defend these youngsters, not in what they are doing, but they are a byproduct of the situation. They are also as victim as the one who has lost his life from the other side. You cannot imagine if you apply an occupation for 60 years over the people of Finland, they will turn into the same violence. If all of us will take our families and live for 1 year in Shu'afat refugee camp, don't be surprised that some of our kids will turn into violence. We should dig into the roots and try to find the solution to the problem from its roots. I say this while I totally condemn any act of violence from both sides.
Thank you very much, Samar. Now, before we will close this fascinating event, I will want to invite to the stage our founder and president, Ben Birnbaum, who has a very unique gift for our panelists. It's an olive tree, a symbol of prosperity and peace, and it's a work of art of Stan Salman's uncle, who is one of the founders of Ropes. I thank you very much for this discussion, and let us pray for peace. Salam, shalom to everyone. Thank you very much.